The courtroom was huge and cold. Jake Morrison sat in a metal chair in the center of the room. His hands were tied behind his back with energy chains that glowed blue. Around him sat judges from 12 different alien species. Their eyes stared at him like he was some kind of dangerous animal. Jake was a human officer in the Galactic Defense Coalition. He had brown hair and steady green eyes. His uniform was torn and dirty from 3 weeks in prison, but he sat up straight and kept his head high. He would not show fear to these aliens who wanted to kill him. The lead judge was a tall creature, called Admiral Vextar. He had gray skin and 4 arms. His species was called the Zilithians. They ruled most of this part of the galaxy. Admiral Vextar looked at Jake with disgust, like Jake was something nasty he had stepped on. "Human Jake Morrison," Admiral Vextar said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "You stand accused of serious crimes. You disobeyed direct orders during battle. You stopped your commanding officer from doing his duty. You put the entire Coalition fleet at risk." Jake said nothing. He just stared back at the alien admiral. 3 weeks ago, during the Battle of Kepler 442b, you were ordered to execute 200 enemy prisoners. Admiral Vextar continued. These prisoners were rebels from the free colonies. They had fought against coalition forces. They deserved to die for their crimes. The other alien judges nodded their heads. Some of them made clicking sounds that Jake knew meant they agreed. One judge that looked like a giant insect rubbed its claws together. Another judge that was made of living crystal glowed brighter. "But you refuse this order," Admiral Vextar said. "Not only did you refuse, you actively stopped the execution. You disabled the weapon systems on your own ship. You betrayed your oath as a coalition officer." Jake finally spoke. His voice was calm and clear. Those prisoners had surrendered. They were not fighting anymore. Killing them would have been murder. The courtroom exploded with angry sounds. The alien judges hissed and clicked and buzzed. Admiral Vextar slammed one of his forehands on his desk. "Silence," he roared. "This is exactly the problem with humans. You are too soft, too weak. You think mercy is a virtue, but mercy is what makes you unfit for real war." Jake's lawyer stood up. Her name was Lisa Harper. She was also human with short black hair and determined brown eyes. She wore the blue uniform of Earth's military legal corps. "Your Honor," Lisa said, "my client was following human military law. According to Earth regulations and interstellar treaties, prisoners who have surrendered must be treated humanely." Admiral Vextar laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Human law means nothing here. You are part of the coalition now. You follow coalition rules, and coalition rules say that enemies must be destroyed completely to prevent future rebellion." Lisa tried to argue more, but the other judges would not listen. They had already made up their minds. To them, Jake was guilty of being too human. He had shown mercy when he should have shown strength. He had chosen to save lives when he should have chosen to take them. The trial went on for hours. Witness after witness came forward to testify against Jake. They were all aliens from different coalition species. They talked about how humans were too emotional, too concerned with individual lives, too unwilling to do what was necessary for victory. A bird-like creature called Commander Scrix spoke first. "The human Morrison's actions were disgraceful," Scrix squawked. "In my species, we would have executed the prisoners and their families. This sends a clear message to other rebels." Next came General Thax, who looked like a walking tree with too many eyes. "Humans claim to be warriors, but they fight like children," Thax said in a voice like rustling leaves. "They hesitate when they should strike. They spare enemies who will only fight them again later." Then Captain Zorvac took the stand. He was from a species that looked like walking suits of armor. "I have fought alongside humans in 6 battles," Zorvac said. "They are brave, but their bravery is wasted. They risk their lives to save enemies. They give medical aid to those who are trying to kill them moments before. This is not wisdom. This is madness." Each witness made the same point. Humans were too soft for galactic warfare. They cared too much about individual lives. They followed rules that other species saw as weakness. Jake listened to all of this without changing his expression. But inside he felt sick. These aliens had built their empire by crushing anyone who stood against them. They won wars by making their enemies too afraid to fight back. To them, mercy was not just useless, it was dangerous. When it was time for Jake to speak, he stood up slowly. The energy chains made it hard to move, but he managed. "I joined the coalition because I believed in protecting innocent people," Jake said. "I thought we were fighting to make the galaxy safer and more free. But you do not want safety or freedom. You want fear. You want every species in the galaxy to be so terrified of you that they never dare to resist." Admiral Vextar's eyes glowed, red with anger. "Fear keeps the peace, human. Fear prevents wars." "No," Jake said firmly. "Fear causes wars. Fear makes people desperate. When you show mercy, you show strength. When you spare prisoners, you show that you are strong enough to choose life over death. But you would not understand that." The alien judges made more angry sounds. They did not want to hear about mercy or strength. They had already decided that Jake was guilty. The trial ended quickly after that. Admiral Vextar did not even leave the room to make his decision. He announced the verdict immediately. "Jake Morrison, you are guilty of all charges," Admiral Vextar declared. "You have shown that humans cannot be trusted with real military responsibility. You have proven that your species is too weak for coalition membership." Jake felt Lisa's hand on his shoulder. She was trying to comfort him, but they both knew what was coming next. "The sentence is death," Admiral Vextar continued. "You will be executed by neural disintegration in 72 hours. This will serve as a message to Earth and any other species that thinks mercy has a place in galactic warfare." The guards came to take Jake away. As they dragged him from the courtroom, he heard the alien judges celebrating. They thought they had won something important. They thought they had taught humanity a lesson about strength and weakness, but Jake knew something they did not know. Earth was watching, Earth was listening, and Earth would not let this stand. The aliens thought mercy was weakness. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The news reached Earth exactly 47 minutes after the trial ended. Every screen in the Human Defense Command Center showed the same terrible message. Human officer sentenced to death for refusing to execute prisoners. President Catherine Walsh stood in the main war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her sat the most powerful military leaders on Earth. Their faces were dark with anger as they watched the alien trial footage. "They want to kill Jake Morrison for being a decent human being," President Walsh said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone could hear the fury underneath. "They think mercy makes us weak. They think compassion makes us unfit for war." Admiral Richard Cole was the head of Earth's space fleet. He was an old man with gray hair and scars from 3 different wars. His hands shook with rage as he spoke. "Morrison was following orders," Admiral Cole said. "Human orders, Earth orders. We do not execute prisoners. We do not murder helpless people. If that makes us weak in their eyes, then so be it." General Patricia Knox commanded the Space Marine Corps. She had led soldiers in battles across 12 different star systems. Her left arm was mechanical, lost in a fight with space pirates near Jupiter. She looked at the footage of Jake being dragged away in chains. "The coalition species have never fought a real war," General Knox said. "They spend their time crushing primitive worlds that cannot fight back. They think brutality equals strength, because they have never faced an enemy that could truly hurt them." Director Alex Turner ran Earth's Special Operations Command. He was a small, quiet man that most people would forget after meeting him, but his eyes were cold as winter, and when he spoke, everyone listened. "Morrison showed them our mercy," Turner said softly. "He showed them our humanity. He showed them our moral code, and they rejected it. They laughed at it. They condemned him to death for it." President Walsh nodded slowly. She had been elected because people trusted her to keep Earth safe. But right now, keeping Earth safe meant something different than usual. "What are our options?" she asked. "Admiral," Cole pulled up a star chart. Red dots showed coalition military bases scattered across the galaxy. "We could demand his release through diplomatic channels," he said. "But they have already rejected our ambassador's protests." General Knox shook her head. "Diplomacy will not work. They see us as inferior. They think we are too weak to threaten them." They believe we will accept this insult because we are too civilized to fight back. Director Turner leaned forward. There is another option, he said. We could show them what human warfare looks like when we are not being merciful. The room went silent. Everyone knew what Turner was suggesting. President Walsh stared at the footage of Jake's trial. She watched Admiral Vextar mock human mercy. She saw the alien judges celebrate Jake's death sentence. She heard them call humanity too weak for galactic warfare. They want to see what we look like without mercy, President Walsh said. They think our compassion is weakness. They believe our morality makes us soft. She turned to Director Turner. Tell me about the ghosts. Turner's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. The Ghost Corps is our most classified military unit, he said. They are soldiers who do not officially exist. They are trained for operations that regular military cannot perform. They work in the shadows behind enemy lines, in situations where normal rules do not apply. How many? President Walsh asked. 50 active operatives, Turner replied. Each, one worth 1,000 regular soldiers. They specialize in psychological warfare, infiltration, and surgical strikes. They can go anywhere, kill anyone, destroy anything. Admiral Cole looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, deploying the ghosts would be an act of war. The coalition outnumbers us 1,000,000 to 1. If we attack them directly— Who said anything about a direct attack? Turner interrupted. The coalition thinks mercy is weakness. They think compassion is a flaw. They believe humans are too soft for real warfare. Perhaps it is time they learned the difference between choosing to be merciful and being incapable of cruelty. General Knox smiled, and it was not a pleasant sight. Morrison showed them our best angels. Maybe they need to meet our demons. President Walsh walked to the main display screen. It showed live footage from the coalition trial. Jake Morrison was being led to his prison cell. In 72 hours, he would be dead unless something changed. The coalition has made a mistake, President Walsh said. They think mercy is weakness because they have never been strong enough to choose mercy. They think brutality is strength because they have never been disciplined enough to choose restraint. She turned back to her military commanders. Every human child learns about the Geneva Conventions before they learn to read. Every human soldier trains in the laws of war before they learn to fire a weapon. We follow rules of engagement not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to control ourselves. Director Turner nodded. Morrison represented our conscience. If they want to kill our conscience, then perhaps they should meet what we look like without one. President Walsh made her decision. It was not a choice she made lightly. She knew the consequences. She understood the risks. But some lines could not be crossed without response. Deploy the ghosts, she ordered. 3 operatives. Send them to Nexus Prime. Their mission is to retrieve Morrison and deliver a message. What message? Admiral Cole asked. President Walsh's eyes were harder than steel. That human mercy is not weakness. It is a gift. And gifts can be withdrawn. Turner stood up. I will select the team personally. Colonel Danny Pierce will lead the mission. He has never failed an assignment. What are the rules of engagement? General Knox asked. President Walsh thought for a moment. The same rules the coalition follows, she said finally. None. Within 6 hours, a black ship called the Harbinger launched from Earth's most secret military base. It carried 3 passengers and enough firepower to level a small moon. But its real weapons were not bombs or bullets. Its real weapons were the 3 people on board. 3 humans who had spent their entire careers learning to be ghosts. 3 soldiers who could move through enemy territory like shadows. 3 operatives who had never shown mercy to anyone who threatened innocent lives. The coalition wanted to see what human warfare looked like without mercy. They were about to find out. As the Harbinger jumped to hyperspace, Director Turner sent one final message to Coalition Command. It was simple and direct. You have 72 hours to release Lieutenant Commander Morrison and issue a formal apology to Earth. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The message was unsigned, but it carried the seal of Earth's military command. The countdown had begun. The Harbinger appeared near Nexus Prime without warning. The black ship dropped out of hyperspace like a shadow falling from the sky. For exactly 3 seconds, it showed up on every radar screen and sensor array around the massive space station. Then it vanished again, as if it had never been there at all. Admiral Vextar was having a celebration dinner in his private quarters. The main dining hall was filled with Coalition officers from dozens of different species. They were drinking alien wine and eating expensive food from across the galaxy. Everyone was laughing and talking about the human they were going to execute in 2 days. To victory over human weakness, Admiral Vexitar said, raising his glass. The other officers cheered and drank. They felt very proud of themselves. General Thax, the tree-like station commander, was telling a joke about humans when every screen in the room suddenly went black. Then words appeared in bright red letters. You have 24 hours to release Lieutenant Commander Morrison and issue a formal apology to Earth. This is not a negotiation. The celebration stopped immediately. Officers put down their drinks and stared at the screens. The message repeated 3 times, then disappeared. Admiral Vextar laughed loudly. Some human trick, he said. They think they can frighten us with computer games. One small ship against Nexus Prime. This station has more firepower than their entire fleet. But General Thax looked worried. Sir, how did they hack our systems? Our security is supposed to be impossible to break. Humans are clever with computers, Admiral Vextar said, but cleverness will not save them here. Double the guards around the prison. Increase patrols. If any humans try to board this station, we will capture them and execute them alongside Morrison. The officers went back to their party, but the mood had changed. Some of them kept looking at the screens, wondering if the message would appear again. That night, strange things began to happen throughout Nexus Prime. Security cameras in the lower levels showed shadows moving through corridors that should have been empty. But when guards went to investigate, they found nothing. The shadows seemed to move through walls and disappear into air. Guard Post 7 went silent at midnight. When other guards came to check, they found the 3 alien soldiers unconscious on the floor. They were not hurt, just sleeping very deeply. When they woke up hours later, they had no memory of what had happened. All they could remember was seeing a human face for just a moment before everything went black. Guard Post 12 suffered the same fate an hour later. Then Guard Post 4. Then Guard Post 9. Each time, the guards were found unconscious and unharmed, with no memory of their attacker. General Thax increased patrols and activated emergency protocols. He sent armed teams to every section of the station, but it made no difference. The invisible intruders continued their work. By morning, 12 high-ranking Coalition officers had vanished from their quarters. Their doors were still locked. Their security systems showed no signs of forced entry. The officers had simply disappeared during the night, leaving behind only a message written on their bedroom walls in black letters. Ghosts do not follow. Your rules. Admiral Vextar was eating breakfast in his private dining room when Colonel Danny Pierce appeared. One moment the Admiral was alone, reading reports about the missing officers. The next moment a human was sitting across from him, helping himself to alien fruit from the table. Pierce was not a large man. He had brown hair, average height, and the kind of face that people forgot immediately after seeing. But his eyes were different. They were cold and empty, like looking into deep space. Admiral Vextar's 4 bodyguards reached for their weapons, but stopped when they looked down. Their guns had been completely taken apart. Every piece lay in neat piles at their feet. They had not heard a sound. Good morning, Admiral, Pierce said calmly. I am here about Lieutenant Commander Morrison. Admiral Vextar tried to activate his emergency alarm, but nothing happened. He tried to call for help, but his communication device was dead. All the screens in the room showed the same message. System offline. How did you get in here? Admiral Vextar demanded. This room is the most secure location on the station. Pierce bit into a piece of alien fruit. Your security is designed to stop armies and fleets, he said. We are not an army. We are 3 people who know how to be invisible. 3 people? Admiral Vextar laughed, but it sounded nervous. 3 humans have done all this? Lieutenant Commander Morrison was court-martialed for showing mercy to 200 prisoners, Pierce said. You called him weak. You said mercy makes humans unfit for warfare, but you do not understand what mercy really means. Pierce stood up and walked to the large window that looked out at the Coalition fleet. Hundreds of alien warships floated in space around the station, their weapons pointed outward to defend against attack. Mercy is not weakness, Pierce continued. Mercy is what we choose when we are strong enough to destroy our enemies but decide not to. Mercy is discipline. Mercy is control. Mercy is proof that we are better than our worst instincts. Admiral. Vextar's translator was having trouble with some of the human words. You speak of discipline, but you have invaded my station. You have attacked my officers. Pierce turned back to face the alien admiral. Have we? Your missing officers are safe and unharmed. They are being educated about human military history. They are learning what real warfare looks like. But we have not hurt anyone. A new voice spoke from behind Admiral Vextar. Yet? The admiral spun around to see Major Susan Hart standing near the door. She had not been there a moment before. She was a small woman with short red hair and freckles. She looked like someone's sister or daughter, but her smile was sharp as a knife. Your people think violence equals strength, Hart said. You believe that causing fear makes you powerful, but fear is what weak people use when they cannot earn respect. Admiral Vextar backed away from both humans. What do you want? We want Morrison released, Pierce said simply. We want a formal apology from the Coalition, and we want new rules about treating prisoners. Impossible, Admiral Vextar said. The Coalition will never bow to human demands. We have 1 million ships. You have 3 people. Pierce and Hart looked at each other and smiled. It was not a nice smile. Admiral, Pierce said softly, you still do not understand. We are not here to threaten you with our fleet. We are here to show you what 3 humans can do when they stop being merciful. Hart walked to the window and looked out at the Coalition fleet. Every ship out there has a crew of hundreds or thousands. Every ship has weapons that could destroy planets. Every ship represents the power and pride of your empire. She turned back to Admiral Vextar. But every ship also has a life support system. Every ship has a computer core. Every ship has officers who need to sleep sometime. Pierce nodded. We could disable your entire fleet in one night. We could make every officer on every ship disappear. We could turn your mighty Coalition armada into empty metal floating in space. But we will not, Hart added, because we are choosing to be merciful, just like Morrison chose to be merciful to those prisoners. The question is, will you accept our mercy, or will you force us to show you what we look like without it? Admiral. Vextar stared at the 2 humans. For the first time in his life, he understood the difference between strength and brutality. These humans could destroy everything he cared about, but they were offering him a choice instead. The 3rd ghost, finally, appeared in the room. Sergeant Kevin Cruz had been there the entire time, invisible to every sensor and security system the Coalition possessed. He materialized beside Admiral Vextar like a shadow becoming solid. 24 hours, Cruz said quietly. Release Morrison, apologize to Earth, and change your prisoner policies. Or learn what human warfare looks like when we stop choosing mercy. The 3 humans vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving Admiral Vextar alone with his unconscious bodyguards, and a terrible choice. The 12 missing Coalition officers woke up in comfortable rooms with no windows. The walls were white and clean. Each room had a bed, a table, and a chair. There was food and water waiting for them. But the doors would not open, and there were no guards to talk to. Commander Scrix, the bird-like officer, tried to break down his door. It would not move. He tried to call for help, but his communication device was gone. He searched the room for weapons or tools, but found nothing useful. Then the wall in front of him lit up like a giant screen. Words appeared. Educational program, beginning. Please sit down and watch carefully. Scrix did not want to sit down. He wanted to escape. But when he tried to ignore the screen, a gentle voice said, Commander Scrix, this information will help you understand human military philosophy. We recommend you pay attention. The voice was polite but firm. Scrix realized he had no choice. He sat down in the chair and watched. The screen showed battles from human history. Scrix saw human soldiers fighting in terrible conditions. He watched them charge across open ground while enemies shot at them. He saw them fight in frozen trenches during winter. He watched them storm beaches while heavy guns fired down at them. These are human warriors, the voice explained. Notice how they fight even when victory seems impossible. Notice how they continue fighting even when most of their friends are dead. This is what humans call courage. Scrix was confused. He had seen many battles before, but these humans fought differently. They did not use overwhelming force to crush weak enemies. They fought against enemies that were just as strong as they were, sometimes stronger. The screen showed more battles. Humans fighting in jungles for years. Humans fighting in cities that had been bombed to ruins. Humans fighting in space stations that were falling apart. In every battle, the humans could have retreated. In every battle, they chose to keep fighting instead. Human soldiers do not fight because victory is easy. The voice continued. They fight because their cause is right. They fight to protect people who cannot protect themselves. They fight to stop those who would hurt the innocent. But then the screen showed something that surprised Scrix. After the battles were over, human soldiers were giving food to enemy prisoners. Human doctors were treating wounded enemies with the same care they gave their own soldiers. Human engineers were rebuilding the cities they had just conquered. This is what humans call mercy, the voice said. After defeating their enemies, humans choose to help them instead of destroying them. This is not weakness, this is strength under control. In another room, General Thax was watching the same program. The tree-like officer had expected to see human weakness, but instead, he saw something that frightened him. He saw humans who fought harder and longer than any species he knew, but more importantly, he saw humans who chose to be kind to their enemies after victory. The screen showed human soldiers sharing their rations with starving enemy civilians. It showed human medics treating alien soldiers who had been trying to kill them hours before. It showed human engineers building schools and hospitals in territories they had conquered. When humans win a war, they do not enslave the losers, the voice explained. They do not take revenge. They do not steal everything valuable and leave. Instead, they help their former enemies rebuild and become better. General Thax thought about his own species' victories. When his people conquered a world, they took everything useful and left the survivors to starve. When they defeated an enemy fleet, they executed all the officers and sold the crew as slaves. This was normal. This was how war worked. But humans did the opposite. They made their enemies stronger after defeating them. They turned enemies into friends. They built alliances instead of empires of fear. Back in Admiral Vextar's dining room, Colonel Pierce was still sitting at the table. The alien admiral had called for reinforcements, but no one came. He had tried to activate security protocols, but nothing worked. Your officers are learning about human warfare, Pierce said calmly. They are seeing what we are capable of when we choose to fight. But more importantly, they are learning why we choose mercy instead of cruelty. Major Hart appeared beside Admiral Vextar again. She was carrying a small device that projected holographic images into the air. The images showed battle after battle, where human forces had won through strategy and discipline rather than overwhelming violence. You think Lieutenant Commander Morrison was weak because he refused to execute prisoners? Hart said. But executing helpless people is not strength. It is cowardice. Real strength is having the power to kill your enemies and choosing not to use it. The holographic display changed to show human military academies. Young human soldiers were learning about something called the Geneva Conventions. They were studying rules about how to treat prisoners, how to protect civilians, and how to fight wars without becoming monsters. Every human soldier learns these rules before they learn to fire a weapon, Hart explained. We do not follow these rules because we are weak. We follow them because we are strong enough to control ourselves. Admiral Vextar stared at the images. But rules make you predictable. Rules limit your options. Rules help your enemies. Pierce shook his head. Rules make us better than our enemies. Rules prove that we fight for justice, not for conquest. Rules show that we are civilized beings, not savage animals. The holographic display showed more examples. Human forces that had won battles by protecting enemy civilians instead of using them as hostages. Human commanders who had gained valuable intelligence by treating prisoners well instead of torturing them. Human armies that had ended wars quickly by showing mercy instead of cruelty. Violence creates more violence, Hart said. Fear creates more resistance. Cruelty creates more enemies, but mercy creates allies. Kindness creates loyalty. Justice creates peace. Sergeant Cruz materialized near the window. He had been watching the Coalition fleet the entire time, invisible to their sensors. Your species build empires through fear, Cruz said quietly. You rule by making others afraid of what you will do if they disobey. But fear does not last forever. Eventually, the afraid become angry. The angry become rebels. The rebels become enemies. He turned to face Admiral Vextar. Humans build alliances through respect. We lead by showing others what they can become if they work with us. We create friends instead of subjects. We build partnerships instead of empires. The holographic display showed the results of human diplomacy. Former enemies that had become close allies. Conquered territories that had become prosperous partners. Wars that had ended with both sides stronger than before. This is why Morrison refused to execute those prisoners, Pierce said, not because he was weak, but because he understood that mercy creates better outcomes than cruelty. Dead prisoners cannot become allies. Dead enemies cannot become friends. Admiral Vextar was beginning to understand, but his pride would not let him admit it. You speak of mercy and kindness, but you have invaded my station. You have kidnapped my officers. You threaten my fleet. Hart smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. We could have destroyed your station. We could have killed your officers. We could have disabled your fleet. But we chose not to. We chose to give you a chance to do the right thing instead. Pierce stood up from the table. That is what mercy means, Admiral. Having the power to destroy your enemies and choosing to offer them a better path instead. Cruz nodded. Morrison showed mercy too. 200 prisoners because he believed they could be better than their worst actions. We are showing mercy to you because we believe the Coalition can be better than its worst instincts. The three humans looked at Admiral Vextar with steady eyes. They were giving him a choice. He could learn from this lesson and change, or he could continue down the path of fear and cruelty. 12 hours remain, Pierce said softly. Choose wisely. The humans vanished again, leaving Admiral Vextar alone with a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Vextar sat alone in his dining room for 6 hours. He did not eat, he did not drink. He just stared out the window at his mighty fleet and thought about what the humans had shown him. The 12 missing officers had been returned to their quarters. They were unharmed but quiet. When other Coalition leaders asked them what had happened, they just shook their heads and said, "We need to talk." General Thax was the first to visit Admiral Vextar. The tree-like commander looked tired and confused. "Sir," General Thax said, "I have seen things that trouble me. The humans showed us their military history. They fight differently than we do. They fight harder than we do. But they also show mercy that we do not understand." Admiral Vextar nodded slowly. "I know. I have been thinking about this as well." "What should we do?" General Thax asked. Before Admiral Vextar could answer, the three humans appeared in the room again. Colonel Pierce, Major Hart, and Sergeant Cruz stood before them like shadows becoming solid. "Time is up," Pierce said simply. "What is your decision?" Admiral Vextar looked at the three humans. They did not point weapons at him. They did not threaten him. They just waited for his answer. "I want to understand something," Admiral Vextar said. "You claim there are only 3 of you on this station. 3 humans who have made our entire defense system useless. Is this true?" "Yes," Hart replied. "How is this possible?" Pierce walked to the window and looked out at the Coalition fleet. "Admiral, your ships are designed to fight other ships. Your soldiers are trained to fight other soldiers. Your weapons are built to destroy armies and fleets." He turned back to face the alien officers. "But we are not a ship or an army or a fleet. We are 3 people who learn to be invisible. We are 3 people who learn to move without being seen. We are 3 people who learn to think differently than our enemies." Sergeant Cruz stepped forward. "Your species conquered the galaxy by using big fleets to crush smaller fleets. You won by having more ships and bigger guns than your enemies, but you never learned to fight smart." Admiral Vextar felt something cold in his stomach. "Are you saying humans could defeat the coalition?" The 3 humans looked at each other. Major Hart answered carefully. "We are saying that Lieutenant Commander Morrison was court-martialed for showing mercy to 200 prisoners. Would you like to know what Earth's military record looks like when we do not show mercy?" A new holographic display appeared in the room. It showed classified human military operations that had never been revealed to the galactic community. Admiral Vextar and General Thax watched in growing horror. They saw orbital weapons that could crack continents. They watched the deployment of machines that could sterilize entire star systems. They observed military strategies that would have driven enemy species to extinction within months. "Every human soldier carries the capacity for total war," Hart explained. "But we choose restraint. We choose mercy. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to control our own destructive potential." The display showed more weapons, bombs that could destroy planets, ships that could travel through space faster than any coalition vessel, computers that could hack any alien system in seconds. "We have all of this," Pierce said quietly, "but we choose not to use it. We could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago. We could have destroyed every species that opposed us. We could have built an empire based on fear and death." "Why did you not?" Admiral Vextar asked. "Because we learned something that your species never learned," Cruz replied. "We learned that the strongest warriors are those who choose when not to kill. We learned that real power comes from building alliances, not destroying enemies. We learned that mercy is not weakness. It is the ultimate expression of strength." The holographic display changed to show what human warfare looked like without restraint. Admiral Vextar saw battles where humans had fought with no rules, no mercy, and no limits. The destruction was terrible beyond imagination. "This is what we look like when we stop being merciful," Hart said. "This is what we become when we abandon our moral code. This is why Lieutenant Commander Morrison refused to execute those prisoners." Pierce nodded. "Morrison represents the best of humanity. He is a warrior who knows when not to fight. He is a soldier who understands that true strength sometimes means choosing compassion over conquest." Admiral Vextar stared at the images. He finally understood what the humans were trying to tell him. Morrison had not been weak when he refused to execute the prisoners. He had been showing incredible strength. He had been choosing to be better than his worst instincts. "You could destroy us all," Admiral Vextar said quietly. "Yes," Pierce replied, "but you choose not to." "Yes, because you believe we can be better." "Yes." Admiral Vextar looked at General Thax. The tree-like commander nodded slowly. They both understood now. "Release Lieutenant Commander Morrison immediately," Admiral Vextar ordered. "Prepare a formal apology to Earth. Draft new protocols for the treatment of prisoners across all coalition forces." General Thax hurried to carry out the orders. Within an hour, Jake Morrison was released from his cell. The charges against him were dropped. A formal apology was sent to Earth's government. But more importantly, new rules were established throughout the coalition. Prisoners would be treated humanely. Civilians would be protected during conflicts. Military operations would follow ethical guidelines. As the Harbinger prepared to leave Nexus Prime, Admiral Vextar stood at his viewport watching the small black ship disappear into hyperspace. His aide approached nervously. "Sir, should we track their departure? Should we follow them?" Admiral Vextar continued staring into space. "No, and send a message to all coalition fleets. Human mercy is not weakness. It is a gift, and we should pray they never decide to stop giving it." The aide did not understand, but Admiral Vextar did. He had seen what humans were capable of when they abandoned restraint. The fact that they chose mercy instead was not a limitation. It was the only thing standing between the galaxy and humanity's true potential for destruction. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, but more importantly, he had unknowingly changed the entire galactic perception of human military doctrine. The Coalition learned that day that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactical brilliance. It was their choice to be better than their enemies, even when they had the power to destroy them completely. Years later, when young Coalition officers asked Admiral Vextar about the humans, he would tell them this: "Never mistake human kindness for weakness. Never confuse human mercy for inability. The humans choose to be gentle because they are strong enough to be terrible. And the day they stop choosing kindness is the day the galaxy learns what real warfare looks like." The humans had shown the Coalition the difference between strength and brutality. They had proven that mercy was not weakness but the highest form of power, and they had done it all to save one man who refused to murder helpless prisoners. That was the day the galaxy learned to respect human values. Not because humans were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose compassion over conquest, mercy over murder, and justice over revenge. Jake Morrison had shown them mercy. The ghosts had shown them what mercy really meant, and the galaxy was better for it.